So we've got IEM collabs with reviewers, we've got IEMs with anime waifus on them, some of them quite tasteful and nice, others are a lot more whatever this is. But how about IEMs that are themed after sea creatures? Well, that's what TRN is doing with their releases. One is the TRN Orca and the other the Seahorse. This one is a budget 1DD Chi-Fi IEM but with tuning switches for a nice little twist, and the other, the Seahorse, being a premium earbud of all things. So let's see how they fare in today's video. I've also worked with TRN to give you guys a free TRN Orca. Check out the comments and the description of the video for more details on that. And with your support in terms of giving likes and subscribing, I'll be able to make more giveaways happen, so you know what to do. Let's start with the TRN Orca. Well, it might be a budget $20 IEM, but what sets it apart are gonna be the tuning switches on these. The front plate, it looks like an Orca, befitting its name. You get a basic cable, pair of Moondrop spring tip lookalikes, and 3 generic silicone pairs. Also, there's a sim tool to flip the switches, which I lost. It's a very small thing, so very likely you'll lose it. Be careful with that. On stock sound, I was expecting like a roller coaster kind of tuning, but no, it's genuinely really well executed for a TRN IEM. You can ignore the strong 8 kHz resonance on the graphs. It's just a really nicely done sound with a bass that's present, but I wouldn't say overpowering, giving that bumpy presentation, spicing up the music, you know. The mid-range here is also mostly neutral. You have a natural Pinot rise and slightly reduced presence near the 2 to 4 kHz region. This pulls the vocals back somewhat and puts the focus more on instrumentals. The treble, it's just fine. A little lacking in detail and fidelity, but it's to be expected of this price, right? It still actually compares quite favorably, the Orca here, to things like the Truth Ear Hola, Truth Ear Gate, the Soundnote 02, and even the Tangentium Bunny. The thing is, it doesn't have the DSP like the Bunny, but you have tuning switches for the extra versatility. You can see 3 switches on the IEMs, but basically the first switch is like a gain switch. It doesn't reflect on the squiggling graph, but you will see like a 2 to 3 decibel volume increase flipping the switch on. Now I will note that when the first switch is flipped on, actually it's, I guess you could call it a high gain mode. The sound changes that happens from the second to third switch, they just do not apply in the high gain mode. It just does not change it that much. If you want to experience how the sound changes with the tuning switches, I would suggest you flip the first switch off. So what about that middle switch? It basically gives a full like 2 to 3 decibel reduction at about 3 kHz and beyond. TRN says that this is a bass enhancement switch. However, I think what it does is reducing the mid-range and higher end energy to give the bass more presence. It's not additive EQ, it's subtractive EQ basically. And I really like the way this is done because it gives this sort of slightly more relaxed sound. It doesn't increase the bass hump to give like bumpiness, but it actually makes for a better long listening experience and a much more calm tonality on the Orca. Well, if it's a whale, it should be hopefully calm, right? So good on them for doing that. Now the final switch on the Orca, it increases the treble range. Although I don't use this mode that much because it just kind of gives you more sizzle and sibilance. And if you flip both switches on, they kind of just cancel each other out as well. So only one switch should be on to have a noticeable sound change. Now, if you want a $20 Chi-Fi with some tuning flexibility and one that's using like a physical system rather than software DSP stuff, then the Orca actually it gives you quite a nice performance on the stock sound and some nice flavor changes with the switch. I quite like these, and that's why I want to give one of these away so you guys can experience it too. So how about the other sea creature that TRN used? The Seahorse. You can see it on the cover right here. Well, this one is an earbud design. It's a glossy silver shell and it reflects and catches the light well, but also fingerprints, of course. It's made of metal as confirmed by the
touch technique.
You gotta look at me with an extra straight face though and tell me that this does not look like a shower head. It really does look like that, I'm telling you. Now, the ergonomics inside the ear, they're pretty similar to MX500 earbuds, but it helps that TRN includes both normal foam pads and these kind of silicone rings that slip and grip into my ears much better. They also give you a really nice, this pelican style rugged clear case with, actually it includes a lanyard inside, though for some reason there's no place on it to hook the lanyard in. I'm not sure what's that all about. I just wish they also gave us the foam pads with the holes poked into them. You guys know that one? I think they call it like donut foams. Sure, there's not there, but I guess if you have a hole punch, you can just DIY that with the normal foam pads that they give you. That's certainly a choice. Now the cable included is fabric lined, but it has an outer silicone coat. So it still feels fairly supple and premium, although you can see it kind of wrinkles because of that. And you have 2-pin connectors that plug into the Seahorse, meaning you can change the cables on this earbud should you choose. You know, I've reviewed like cheap $10, $15 earbuds. I've reviewed earbuds that are maybe like close to 40, 50 bucks, but how does an $80 earbud sound like? Well, it's a different take from the usual earbud sound. Instead of the lush, the warm and bassy tones that you get to hear from other earbuds, the Seahorse has a brighter leaning to it. It offers a modest lushness compared to other earbuds, but you're not getting bass here, like not much at all, even with the foam pads on. However, I think the Seahorse still has a warm lower mid-range that is customary of earbuds, and this in most cases creates a very pleasant listening experience. But there are times where I feel like the Seahorse has this sort of boxy feeling to the sound, especially on like male vocals, which sound a bit unnatural, lacking that sort of body. There are standout songs on the Seahorse though. I really liked how bouncy the synths were in Black and Blue by Slumberjack. And the female singer had just enough forwardness, but not being overly shouty. That's really a nice balance they achieved. The Karma Fields edit of All Night is also really nice. Plays well to the Seahorse's strengths. The song itself kind of mixed to feel like it's playing through a radio, and it just works quite nicely with all earbuds, but on a Seahorse, doubly so. The treble clarity on the Seahorse is also a standout. It's a step above the other earbuds I have experienced. So, you know, as you pay more money, there is still quality improvements going on. The Seahorse reminds me of the Moondrop Nameless, if you remember that one. It sacrifices bass impact to achieve a clear presentation on an earbud, which is not often what you would associate with like having detail and sparkle, right? But for Seahorse, it has that kind of feel. Now for something like EDM, no, like the Seahorse will just not have enough rumble to satisfy. But if you stick with bassline genres, acoustic mixes, simpler mixes, you'll have a good time. Now the Seahorse, I think for staging, it has a slightly wider staging than most IEMs, but for earbud standards, I would say it's actually slightly intimate due to the mid-range being quite forward. Due to the mid-range being pretty in your face actually. Now, is it worth the 80 bucks that they charge? For that, I don't know. I like how it sounds. The Seahorse itself is certainly well built as well, but I feel like this money could be, I don't know, better spent on an IEM. earbuds, they kind of plateau in performance after like $50 for me. We still have some improvements over the lower tiers, but it's not a drastic improvement, you know. Maybe, you know, earbud fans, people who have like been in this niche for a long enough time, they will think differently. Maybe they really will like this kind of higher end, higher tier product. So, you know, if you have owned earbuds, or if you have a lot of earbuds, if you're like a big earbud guy, tell me in the comments your most expensive, your most high-end earbud purchase. How good that sounds, all right? I wanna know. Thanks for watching. Check the comment section and the description of the video for more details on how to win your very own TRN Orca, and I'll see you for the next video. Thank you to TRN for providing a Orca and Seahorse sample for review. However, they do not have any creative or editorial control over my content, and all that I've shared in this video are my honest thoughts.